Hello there, and welcome to the show that's contractually obligated to remind you that what happens in the Oval Office doesn't stay in the Oval Office. Today, we're diving into how former President Trump's policies had a ripple effect on Bangladesh. Yes, Bangladesh, a country over 8,000 miles away from Washington, D.C., from trade wars to climate change, from immigration to the Rohingya crisis, Trump's America First drumbeat had some surprising echoes in the Bay of Bengal. Now you might be thinking, Bangladesh? What does a country known for its garment industry and, sadly, devastating floods have to do with Trump's America? Well, buckle up, because we're about to unravel a tangled web of global politics and economics, and let me tell you, it's messier than a plate of biryani after a toddler has attacked it. Over the next few minutes, we'll examine how Trump's policies, often laser-focused on domestic issues, had unintended consequences that stretched across continents, impacting everything from the livelihoods of Bangladeshi garment workers to the country's ability to combat climate change. Remember Trump's trade war with China? Of course you do. It was like watching two toddlers fight over a toy neither of them really wanted in the first place. Well, one of the unexpected side effects of that economic squabble was a surge in demand for Bangladeshi clothing. You see, as tariffs on Chinese goods increased, American businesses, desperate to avoid those costs, started looking for alternative suppliers. Enter Bangladesh, stage left, with its massive garment industry ready to stitch its way into the gap left by China. Now, on the surface, this seemed like a win for Bangladesh. Increased exports, more jobs, everyone's happy, right? Well, not so fast. The thing is, relying on one big volatile market like the US is about as safe as building a house on a fault line. The uncertainty of US trade policy under the Trump administration, with its constant threats of tariffs and protectionist rhetoric, left the Bangladeshi garment industry in a precarious position, like a nervous chihuahua at a dog park full of Great Danes. The Trump administration's stance on immigration was, shall we say, less than welcoming. Remember the wall, the Muslim ban? Yeah, not exactly rolling out the red carpet, were they? And these policies didn't just affect people trying to enter the US, they also had a significant impact on the Bangladeshi diaspora already living and working there. Take the H-1B visa, for example. This visa program, designed to attract skilled workers, was a lifeline for many Bangladeshi professionals seeking opportunities in the US. But under Trump, the H-1B program was squeezed tighter than a tube of toothpaste nearing its end, making it much harder for Bangladeshis to obtain these visas. And let's not forget the Rohingya crisis, where over 1 million refugees fled violence in Myanmar and sought refuge in Bangladesh. Trump's decision to slash refugee admissions meant that the US, a country built on welcoming the persecuted, turned its back on these desperate people, leaving Bangladesh to shoulder the burden largely alone. Chapter 3. The Rohingya crisis, a test of global leadership, and America's report card wasn't pretty. Let's talk about the Rohingya crisis in a bit more detail, shall we? This was a humanitarian catastrophe unfolding on a massive scale, with over 1 million Rohingya Muslims fleeing ethnic cleansing in Myanmar and seeking refuge in neighboring Bangladesh. Now, you might think that a crisis of this magnitude would have spurred the leader of the free world into action, but unfortunately you'd be wrong. The Trump administration's response to the Rohingya crisis was, to put it mildly, underwhelming. Sure, the United States provided some financial aid to Bangladesh to help with the influx of refugees, but in terms of real leadership on the world stage, it was crickets chirping in an empty stadium. The United States didn't exactly throw its weight around at the United Nations to pressure Myanmar to stop the violence or hold those responsible accountable. This lack of strong US advocacy had real consequences. It emboldened Myanmar's government, slowed down international efforts to address the crisis, and left Bangladesh struggling to cope with a humanitarian disaster it didn't create. It was a stark illustration of the consequences of America retreating from its role as a global leader, and let's just say it wasn't a good look. Chapter 4, Climate Change Doesn't Care About America First. Here's a fun fact. Bangladesh is one of the most climate-vulnerable countries in the world. Rising sea levels, cyclones, floods, you name it, Bangladesh is on the front lines of climate change. So you'd think that the United States, a country with, let's face it, a rather large carbon footprint, would be doing everything it could to help countries like Bangladesh adapt. Right? Well, if you thought that, you clearly haven't been paying attention. Trump's decision to pull the United States out of the Paris Climate Agreement, a global pact designed to tackle climate change, was like kicking someone who's already drowning. It sent a clear message to the world: America doesn't care. This withdrawal had real consequences for Bangladesh. It meant less funding for climate adaptation projects, less pressure on other countries to reduce their emissions, and a greater risk of climate-related disasters in a country already struggling to cope. Chapter 5. Geopolitical Jenga: How Trump Reshuffled the Global Chessboard. International relations are a bit like a game of Jenga, aren't they? You pull out the wrong block and the whole thing can come crashing down. And Trump, with his America First approach, was pulling out blocks left, right, and center. This had a ripple effect across the globe, and Bangladesh was no exception. Trump's decision to pivot away from multilateralism, basically working with other countries, created a vacuum in global leadership. And guess who was more than happy to step into that vacuum? China, of course. With the United States distracted, China swooped in, strengthening its ties with Bangladesh through trade deals and infrastructure investments. Now, this put Bangladesh in a tricky spot. Caught between two superpowers vying for influence, it's a delicate balancing act, and only time will tell how it will play out. But one thing's for sure: Trump's foreign policy decisions had a profound impact on Bangladesh's place in the world. Outrow, the world is a small pond and Trump was a very loud duck. So there you have it. Trump's policies had far-reaching impacts, even touching countries like Bangladesh in significant ways. From trade to immigration, climate change to geopolitics, the ripples of his decisions were felt far beyond the borders of the United States. It's a stark reminder that we live in an interconnected world, and what happens in one corner of the globe can have profound consequences on the other side. And while Trump may no longer be in the White House, the legacy of his policies continues to shape the global landscape. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more insightful content. And the next time you see a Made in Bangladesh tag, remember the complex web of global politics and economics that brought that garment to you.